Hello and welcome to Design and Business Conversations for Creatives. I'm Cheyney and today I'm going to be sharing with you my creative process. This video will talk about how I take an idea and execute it. I have had a request to do this video actually. 2 people have requested me to talk about my creative process and talk about how I go from a brief to a final product. And this is something that is quite difficult to kind of quantify just because every time I work on a project it's kind of different, but also it isn't linear or prescriptive. I did a video the other week talking about creativity in general and I read a previous blog post that I had written, and I'm going to do the same for this topic here because it is something that I've covered before, but I've perhaps come a long way since I wrote the blog post and also had a chance to sort it out a little bit more in my mind and clarify things. Excuse me, I will have to read off my phone, and here it is. So the blog post is called Take a Look Behind the Scenes at My Design Process. Straightforward. Are you a client of mine or are you thinking about becoming one? You might be wondering what my process is to develop a design. Well, I'll break it down for you the best I can. Welcome to the inner workings of my mind. When I was at university, we were taught to use a formulaic process to arrive at a final design. It looked a little bit like this. Receive brief, research, design concepts, develop concepts based on feedback from the client, refine concepts based on feedback, and present final design. This was such a frustrating process to me. By the time I received a brief, my mind erupted about 1,000 concepts. The process of putting them on paper was irrelevant and a waste of time for me. Once I am given a brief, I tend to mull it over in my mind for a day or so. And when I say mull, I mean obsess. I think about it constantly. Go for a walk, think about it. Cook dinner, think about it. Take a shower, think about it. Go to sleep, dream about it. You get what I'm putting down? I obsess over it. My process tends to be a little less linear and looks a little bit more like below, and not always in this order. Receive brief. Obsess over it. Obsess over it some more. Do some research. A lot of this is done on Pinterest. Design and eradicate concepts in my head. Sketch any pictorial elements in my notebook. Render the best concepts on the computer and present concepts to client. Receive feedback, obsess over it. Develop chosen designs in my head, create a problem in my head, blow it out of proportion in my head, solve the problem in my head. Send to client for feedback. Then I make any client or Cheyney driven refinements, and then lastly present to the client. Sometimes this process is catered to the personality of the client. Some clients have a concept that they want executed, and that's perfectly fine by me. I'm happy to work alongside their vision to bring their concept to life. It's worth mentioning that I'm not happy until the client is happy. So this process will bend depending on client feedback. I care as much about the design than the person hiring me. It might be a design that I am proud of, but if the client isn't happy, I'm not happy, and we'll work until it's right for both of us. Moral of the story is, a lot of my designs are done in my head. Those are non-billable hours, people. What you're paying for when you hire me is the hours spent rendering the idea on the computer. So reflecting back on that blog post, I mean, that basically is it. I don't really know how else to explain it. I guess something that is worth mentioning that isn't mentioned in that blog post, that is actually a key component of my process, is the discovery call that I have with my client. So when I work with someone new, they'll generally come to me with an idea of what they want. They might have some design limitations already, or they might have arrived at somewhat of a place with their design expectations or what they want to see or want to explore. Before I start any work or any thinking about the project, I like to chat with the client. This usually comes between 15 minutes, half an hour talking to a client, and generally I am just asking them about themselves and their business, their vision, their target audience, and what they want to achieve with these graphics and who they want them to reach. It's a little bit, I don't know, but so much of this is done intuitively. By the time I have the phone call, I've learned everything that I can about the client, the brief, the project, and then I've spent my hours and hours obsessing over it before I've even touched anything, and kind of having this process of elimination in my head of different visuals that could work. Worth to note, in that time, I'm also drawing inspiration from all over the show. So if I'm working on packaging, in that time where I'm obsessing, I will be looking at all the packaging in the supermarket. I'll be looking at graphics that stand out to me and noticing things that could apply to my client's project and what they've told me on the phone. By the time I actually come to the computer, it's almost there. I would say 80% of the work is done in the phone call and the obsessing. I'm sitting here talking about this and now I'm thinking, geez, what a big subject. Every client is so different. What they need from me is different, so I can generally tell from that first conversation, the very important conversation, how much feedback they're going to need from me or want from me. So some clients will like to be like, here's the project, flex your creative muscles. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want anything to do with it. But then some clients have a little bit of a more difficult time understanding the design process, how to work with a designer, what they can expect. So a lot of managing expectations and education can happen in that space, but it's not a one size fits all thing. I guess it's like all the stars align. A key part of my creative process is keeping the momentum up. So I like to work quite quickly when I get started on a progress, so it can kind of just keep up that same energy. It is such a cool thing when it all comes together, and I really actually like it when a client will push me a little bit out of my comfort zone and challenge me on something, not too much, but challenge me a little bit on something and suggest a direction that I wouldn't usually go down. So I have learnt the power of no over the years. So if a client comes to me with an expectation or a need that I simply can't meet, or the style is so far out of what I can produce, I will always hand them on to somebody else because it's not a good fit. I'm not the right person for the job. But if I start working with a client and they suggest me to go down a path that isn't my most comfortable path, sometimes it can bring such great results. So tell me, do you have a creative process? Or are you able to explain it? Am I the only one here that is like, oh, it's so hard to put into words, it just kind of happens. It's like a little bit of magic, or it just gets done. And so much of it is intuitive that's really hard to explain. I guess I get a feeling and I can match it with a visual, or I can pick up a keyword from a client and just automatically something within me clicks. Maybe it's the education that I have and I'm taking that for granted, or is it something more? I'm not sure. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you have a creative process? Do you follow the formulaic, like research, concept development, final, or is it a little bit more like a squiggly line like mine? Thank you for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe using the button below, and I will see you next time. Bye!